Hey, I've seen a lot of people posting stories on this forum that are supernatural, and I experienced something of the sort when I was a kid. If anybody knows anything, please help. I know what I've seen is real, but nobody else believes me. Here's my story. Forgive me if I'm not that good of a writer. When I was about 8, me and my mom moved into a small house in the countryside. She had gone through a nasty divorce, but she had been lucky enough that we were able to find a good deal on this place. It had 3 bedrooms and a backyard with a forest behind it. For a while, everything was great, until eventually my mom had to return to her office job, and then she hired a babysitter. The girl she hired was pretty young, 19 at most. She introduced herself as Carla. Carla was the most good-looking person I'd ever seen with my prepubescent eyes. She was Filipino with long, dark hair and this killer smile. The first few times she'd come over to watch over me, they were great. She'd bring board games and we'd play together, and she'd buy me snacks before she came over. The one thing Carla was strict about was always getting me to bed at 9 p.m., not a minute later. Still, she became my favorite person quickly. I'd run from my school bus to see her already there, smiling with her perfect teeth. Then I started to notice stuff about her, like the way she'd walk kind of awkwardly, or the way her pupils were always a bit dilated, like she was in a dark room. Of course, I could care less. She was my best friend, and I wouldn't judge her for little quirks like that. One night, when my mom was on a particularly late shift, I couldn't sleep. I turned my body to the window that was near my bed and watched the tree leaves shake and sway in the breeze. I was just about to drift off when I saw a naked Carla sprint towards the backyard fence. I sat up straight in bed and just stared at her in disbelief. Carla didn't stop when she reached the fence. Instead, she vaulted her body over it and landed on her feet, continuing running without a pause. She disappeared into the dark right behind the trees, on the tree line of the forest. My mouth was wide open in disbelief. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. What is she going in the woods for? Why is she naked? How did she jump over the fence like that? I stayed up all night with those questions, staring out the window for her return. Sure enough, a few hours later she returned. She walked slowly this time, and when she climbed the fence and came inside of the house, there was no sense of urgency like before. The light from the open back door revealed a scar that ran all the way around her waist and her mouth covered in dark liquid. I spent the whole night awake in my bed, thinking of what I had seen. That morning I told my mom everything. She looked at me like I was crazy and scolded me for making up stories about Carla. She's so nice to you, Marcus. Why would you make up such things about her? I cut my losses and apologized, then asked if I could stay home that day. Thankfully, she agreed on the condition that I didn't leave the house and only opened the door for Carla. Maybe she was just weird. Going to the woods could be just some sort of hobby. She probably just ate berries or something, I rationalized. After a long day of just laying around thinking about the explanation, the doorbell finally rang. I sighed and opened the door. My babysitter's hair was pinned up in a bun, and she wore a pair of low-rise jeans and a sweater. She smiled when she saw me. "Hi, Marcus." Looking at her then, I started to think I was wrong about what I had seen, and I started to calm down. I must have maybe just dreamt it at some point. Just drifted off to sleep, I thought. "I brought some board games for us to play," she said, walking inside and setting down her tote bag, down on the coffee table. We spent the day just goofing off, and I quickly began to forget what I had seen. That was until she reached for the box of cereal on the top of the fridge. Her shirt lifted, revealing a scar surrounding her torso. "Hey, how did you get that scar?" I asked, pointing toward the exposed stomach. "Oh, this?" Her face momentarily faltered. before she answered. "It's from an accident I've been in." I didn't press any further, but even at my young age, I was a bit suspicious. Still had no reason to believe otherwise and decided to just ignore it. That night I pretended to go to bed. When I heard her footsteps go downstairs, I shot up and peered out of the window, just in time to see Carla sprint across the backyard. I jumped out of my bed and grabbed the Spider-Man flashlight my dad gave me once. Gathering my courage, I bounded down the stairs, pulling on some tennis shoes and running across the backyard. I needed to see what she was doing out there. By the time I had finished climbing the tall chain-link fence and had reached the tree line, I heard Carla groaning in the distance. I followed the sound, nervous of what I might find. The forest was only illuminated by my flashlight and the moon, and I got more afraid with each step I took. As I finally reached the source of the sound, I switched it off. I arrived at a clearing and hid behind a tree, peeking around it. That's when I saw it. I saw her, Carla, with large black wings and a long tongue that reached her navel. The wings looked like as if they had ripped through her skin. They were back and flapped with as much effort as she must, and she was detaching herself from her lower body. I covered my mouth to stifle a scream, frozen in place by my own fear. Carla's groans turned into final screams as she finally detached her upper body, her entrails hanging out of her as her wings flapped. Sharp teeth glistened in the moonlight as she flew off into the distance, leaving her lower half abdomen on the ground. I collapsed onto the ground, gripped my chest, my heart pounding in my ears. She wasn't human. There was no way she was. It took all the strength to lift up my shaking body off this ground and back to my house. My mind swirled with millions of questions. I don't even remember going into my room. As I laid on my bed just shaking, I watched her return. She would have looked normal if not of her mouth covered in what I now knew as to be blood and lack of clothes. I winced when I heard the front door open. This thing was in my house. I squeezed my eyes shut and prayed what felt like hours until I heard my mom pull into the driveway and enter our house. "Hey, how's Marcus doing?" "Oh, he's fast asleep as always, ma'am." I heard the front door open and close a few moments later, and finally, she was gone. I cried in relief and lingering fear. My mom would never believe me. Nobody would. That's when I came up with a plan. I had to destroy her lower half. She'd have nowhere to return if I destroyed it. It was the only way. The next evening, I avoided Carla for as long as I could, until she finally asked, "What's up with you?" I complained of a made-up stomachache, and she laid off. Every time I looked at her, all I saw was the gashing sharp teeth and the exposed entrails. I wanted to pretend it never happened, but I couldn't. Any day she could attack me and my mother. I had to prove what she was. I waited in bed until she disappeared into the woods again. My heart pounded in my chest. I knew what I had to do. I grabbed a jug of gasoline from the garage and some old matches from the kitchen. I put on some boots and a jacket and packed my flashlight and an old digital camera. I used her tote bag to carry it all. She wouldn't be needing it after tonight. Her clothes lay on our couch as I headed out. I sprinted through the woods, my legs already burning from the climbing of the fence. Carla would have to fly away when the sun rose. Everybody would see her true form. All I had to do was destroy her landing spot. Sure enough, by the time I arrived, Carla, or the least half of her, was gone. Her lower half laid sprawled out on the ground. I did one final check and made sure she was gone, then crept out into the clearing. I absolutely drenched her legs in gasoline, and I lit it with a single match. I took a deep breath and set the legs on fire. They burned for at least an hour, maybe more. I hid behind a tree, awaiting for her return. The camera clutched close to my chest. Only the flames crackling kept me company that night. After an eternity, she finally flew into the clearing. She saw what remained of her lower body. She screamed a guttural, ear-piercing scream. It could have been heard for miles. I dropped the camera and covered my ears, wincing. That was the biggest mistake. Carla whipped her head around, still hovering above the ground. I clapped my hands over my mouth. She looked in my direction for a moment, and tears spilled out of my horrified eyes. Then she flew directly towards me. I screamed and bounded through the forest, with no idea where I was going. I could hear her now in human voice, screaming at me from behind. "You could have been one of us. You could have had strength in flight. Tonight, you will die instead." Her large wings narrowly avoided each branch as she got closer and closer. I cried as I ran, regretting ever leaving my house. My lungs burned. I had never moved so fast in my life, but it was barely fast enough. Finally, I ducked behind another tree, and she passed right by me, still screaming. I stayed standing behind that tree until morning, and even though it took me hours to find my way home, when I arrived, our house was filled with police, with my mom sobbing in the living room. I told them everything. I told them everything now because there was sure proof. But when we arrived into the clearing, there was nothing. The charred legs were gone, along with Carla. I instantly started yelling when I faced the revelation. "But that's impossible. I swear it was right here." The officers all looked at me with pity. They chalked it up to just me seeing Carla run off and then hallucinating in the woods. I know what I saw was true, but I've decided to never speak about it again until now. If anybody knows anything about this, feel free to help me out. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you would like to hear more creepypastas like this, make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel and you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe. I've got a lot of content, a lot more coming, and I know that my schedule has been a little bit wonky. It's just I've got a lot of personal stuff going on, and I'm trying as hard as I can to get videos out. I apologize for the inconvenience and it not staying on a specific schedule, but I will make sure there will at least be videos out every week. So once again, I apologize for that. But if you would like to, make sure to check out the links in the description, like Twitter, Instagram. I'm usually on one of those, a decent amount, I guess. So if you would like to find out stuff about the new videos or see if something's coming out or anything like that, just make sure to check that out. I've got my Twitter, Instagram, including my Gmail if you want to submit a story. If you would like to send me in like a true story or creepypasta, anything. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one.